So Matthew Johnson is our next speaker. He is the Vice President as Volatus Aerospace, in charge of all education and agricultural programs. He has been using drones in precision agriculture since 2015, conducting aerial research in partnership with various universities and commercial agencies, and helping producers utilizing drone technology in ways that work for them. Please welcome Matthew.
Great, thank you. Okay, I don't think I need that. Hey, how's everybody doing? I'm going to try and get things going here right off the bat. Like my introduction says, I've been using drones now in Manitoba and across the prairies since about 2015 is when I first got involved. I used to be a high school teacher, taught mathematics in Winnipeg, and I started a little drone business on the side back in 2015, and that quickly got out of hand. And so now here I am speaking about the latest developments of drones in agriculture at Ag Days. So this is the, I think, third time I've been here. So just to get it started off here, let's see, I want to get you involved. Show of hands, if you just throw up your hand, I want to hear what are some uses. I'm going to tell you some uses, but I want to hear from you. How are you using drones? Give me 10 uses for drones on the farm. Hands up. Anybody? Yo. Mapping, that's a good one. Yep. Anybody else? Spraying. Hey. Checking cows. Yeah. Livestock management. 3, that's good. That's better than I expected. All right, we surveyed 100 farmers and had them tell us what were the top 10 uses that they use drones for on the farm, and this is what they had to say. Number 10, pollination. So not so much a big thing around here, but in areas where they have orchards and stuff like that, they're using drones now to help pollinate the trees, pollinate the fruits on the trees. Inventory management, being able to go around and see what your yield is looking like for different types of crops, whether it's cereal crops or whatever. You can use the mapping component, really ties in very well with that. Delivering sandwiches during harvest, how about that one? Now it's not really a legal one, but that's probably something that a lot of farmers out there, producers are hoping for the regs to allow in the next little while. We got irrigation and H2O management. There's quite a bit actually on that last presentation where they're talking about variable rate. Drones and variable rate go together very well because we're getting that really accurate breakdown, high precision breakdown of what's going on in the field and the variation between the plant health and all that you're able to develop variable rate prescriptions for. Precision seeding. Now, number 6 and number 4, precision spraying, those two are brand new to the industry when it comes to using drones. And I'll be talking more about those in a little bit. Livestock management, someone mentioned that. Erosion monitoring. Research is a huge one. That's one that I'm very, very involved in. I've been involved in for the last about 6 years with some partners, growing crop research organizations around Manitoba specifically, in Saskatchewan, and some of the universities as well. And I'll be talking more about that just to kind of explain to you what this technology is all about, how it actually works. It's not that complicated. And then crop scouting, number 1. So that was me about 10 years ago in 2015. Well, I guess it was 8.5 years ago, getting things started. That's the Inspire 1. It's been exciting. It's been an exciting journey. Back then, there was a huge amount of hype. I don't know if you remember, but there was a lot of hype about drones just doing everything for agriculture. And it didn't take very long. It took only a couple years before that hype turned into frustration because the technology wasn't super easy to use. I think the biggest problem was that people collected a whole bunch of data and that they didn't have anything to do. They didn't know what to do with that data. because the software tools hadn't progressed at the same rate that the data collection tools progressed at. And so we had this delta, this differential between what we were collecting and what we could actually use it for. But over the years, there's been some companies that have been developing some excellent software tools like Pollen Systems and Centera. There's a couple others out there that have very valuable. DJI has a tool that is able to take your multispectral data that you collect, process it, and create those variable rate maps. So I've been in this, I've ridden the wave of hype up and down, and now we're starting into another wave that is the large crop spraying and seeding drones. And that's a very interesting wave because there's been a lot of hype around that for years. We've been waiting for regulations to change for a long time. So if you're considering using drones on your farm, it can be overwhelming because there's quite a bit to the industry, and where do you start? Well, first of all, you can drop by the dome or the drone dome. Here we are, and just across the parking lot is the dome. We are now set up there. We've been waiting diligently for our chance to get in there, and we've been setting up all afternoon. And after I'm done speaking today, you can hop on over and check out some of the systems that are in there. And we've got experts in there that you can talk to help explain a little bit more about what I'm talking about today. But this is probably not where you really want to start. If you're wanting to fly them yourselves, I wouldn't recommend just going out and buying T40 or something along those lines, like a big spray drone. You can hire somebody to go and do that for you to start spraying your fields if you want to get involved in spraying right off the bat, but it's probably not the one you want to start with. You're going to probably want to start with something more along the lines of a micro drone. And just to give you some scale, because that looks gigantic, that looks even bigger than the last one, this is a micro drone. This is that drone right there. This is a DJI Mavic Mini. If you haven't heard of this drone weighs 249 grams. And the Canadian Aviation Regulations, Part 9 of the Canadian Aviation Regulations, mandates that any drone that weighs 250 grams or more, you have to have a pilot certificate, an RPAS, remotely piloted aircraft system piloting certificate, which I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute, but you don't actually need one of those to pilot a micro drone. These have come a long way. So this is the fourth version now. They're on the DJI Mavic Mini 4 Pro. Over the years, to get to the fourth version, they've really increased the flight time, the ease of flight, and the sensor is a huge improvement to the point where it's extremely easy. If you've never played a video game before in your life, if you've never flown a drone before, these aren't really that hard to fly. And if you have a wide open space, which I'm pretty sure most of you probably have some place like that since you're at a show like this, I'm sure you can find a place that's wide open without a lot of trees where you can practice flying something like this. This gives you the perspective that you've never had before of your crops. Being able to go in and take a look and see from above quickly and easily. This takes seconds to get ready to launch. So it's less than 250 grams, 1 gram less than the legal requirements. And really, there are guidelines that you need to follow when you're flying it. They're pretty straightforward guidelines you can find on the Transport Canada website. Know it before you go. I know maybe at the back you would have trouble seeing some of this, but basically keep your drone below 400 feet. Make sure that you're not coming anywhere near any aircraft or anything like that. If there's any other planes or helicopters or birds even in the air that you want to try and keep your drone away from those. Avoid airports, avoid advertised events, and keep your drone where you can see it at all times. Something like this, you can only see this, maybe depending on the cloud cover and what the day is looking like, maybe only 500 or 600 feet. So it's not great to be able to fly it way out to sea as far as you can with it, but it's a good start. From the edge of the field, you can get a good idea of what's going on in your field. So if you've got one of those and you've had some time practicing with a micro drone, then you can start experimenting and working your way up to something a little bit more meaningful in terms of data collection and what you can do with it. And that would be something like that collects multispectral data, something like the Mavic 3 multispectral. This is a new system. Multispectral data, I'm going to get into what that actually means, but this is basically being able to analyze the way that light interacts with plants, with the chlorophyll in the plants, to tell you how healthy they are. So it's really interesting. This is what I do. I spend time working with schools. I used to be in education, like I said. Now I develop educational programs, and I work with school divisions across Manitoba, in Saskatchewan, Alberta, British Columbia, and through the United States. We run these different types of programs, and one of them is a research program where we teach students how to use drones to collect aerial data, and then we teach them how to use machine learning tools online to analyze the data and look for certain things in there, or teach them how it works anyways. So this is how it works. With a multispectral sensor, we're not just collecting the visible light spectrum. We're not just collecting red, green, and blue. That's the visible light spectrum, RGB, that's the short form. But we're also collecting these two other wavelengths of light energy that are coming from the sun. One is red edge, and the other one is NIR, near infrared. Near infrared is somehow, the way that it interacts with chlorophyll is very, very interesting. It interacts with chlorophyll almost the same way that visible light interacts with a mirror. So if you're holding a mirror above your head and someone else flew a drone over and was looking down at you, and there's this big 1 square meter mirror over your head, what is that going to look like to the drone on a sunny day? It's going to be a big, bright white spot because it's reflecting all of the light back up to the source. Chlorophyll reacts in the same way to near-infrared light, that if you have a very healthy plant, like potatoes, for example, super lush, very deep green plants with tons of foliage that reflect about between 90 and 95% of the near-infrared light, if they're healthy, back up to the source. So with a near-infrared sensor, you can fly over the field and you can see that near-infrared light. Now, if there's less chlorophyll in the leaf, it's not going to reflect as much light. It starts absorbing that near-infrared light. There's a fancy drawing, and that basically shows that the leaf is absorbing red, it's absorbing blue, it's reflecting green. That's why it looks green to our eyes. But it's also reflecting a lot of near-infrared light, and we can't see that with our eyes. You can see the green, you can see the greenness of the plant, and that's great. You can get some information from that. But the near-infrared is really the key. That's the secret. And here's a fancier model that basically shows how if we're looking at 3 different substrates, basically we've got the soil. Soil looks pretty much the same across all of those wavelengths. It's absorbing most of the light. So most of the light from the sun is absorbed into the soil. Stressed vegetation, something that is dying or diseased or it's got something wrong with it. It's not as green for whatever reason. It's absorbing a lot of light. It's maybe 40 to 50%. And then you got the healthy vegetation that's way up there and it spikes. It spikes for the near infrared and it spikes for the red edge. And you notice for red edge actually, this one right here, this little band is what we're measuring for the red edge. It's measuring at a point where it's more than this, but it's not quite nearly the same as near infrared. So red edge can give us information about crop health, but not as much as near infrared. But it's the key. When you use them both together, you can get some really good information. So here's 2 different images taken of the exact same point, actually the exact same time with the multispectral sensor. On the left you have near infrared, on the right you have red edge. And there's some weeds growing in there. Some of those weeds are showing up very strongly in the near infrared image. This is just the one up top is just zoomed in on the square down here. And so you can see some of those plants are whiter. They're reflecting more light compared to the other plants around them. That doesn't always necessarily mean that the other plants around them are less healthy. It's just that the weeds are thriving, and that's what happens with weeds, right? They take over because they're more powerful than the plants around them, and they're able to steal the light resource from the other plants around them, trying to get as much energy as they can to grow and thrive. So they're showing up very strongly in the left image, but you can't even see them in the red edge image on the side. They're there. I can see them if you look closely. But in the red edge, you can see there's some other plants that are showing up that aren't quite. They're kind of blended in here on the red near infrared side. So basically the point of this is just to show you that these two different wavelengths, in conjunction with visible light, are very valuable tools for us to be able to analyze health. And not just health, but like to analyze and detect weeds, or to detect growth stages of different types of plants. These are all things that we work with students to teach them how this all kind of works. And this was mentioned in the last presentation, NDVI and NDRE. These are indices that are basically telling us the health of the plants. So normalized difference vegetation index, if you have been involved with ag data, I would think that you've probably heard about this. And this is just kind of taking the near infrared and comparing that wavelength to the red wavelength from the visible light spectrum, and then creating like a percentage value basically out of 100. Actually, it's out of from negative 100 to positive 100, but anything less than about 20% is going to be dead anyways. So the idea behind this is to see in a way that we understand easily, like red is bad, yellow is okay, and green is good, right? That's how we drive down the streets. Stop, red's not good, green means go. That's what NDVI is kind of set up for us. And you can break it into more colors if you want. It's really not about the colors. It's just to show you where in a research context, where the plants are healthier and where they're less healthy. And the way that this is done is when we collect data, we're collecting information. We're collecting a lot of information. Sometimes millions of data points per image. Those are megapixels, right? Megapixels are many, many, many pixels in one image. And if you take an image and you break down the number of pixels, let's say of a plot trial, you can take all of the pixels in one plot and figure out what the reflectance value of near infrared and whatever the other stuff, red edge and doing the NDVI and running those metrics, you can come up with numbers. And those numbers are actually scientific data. And the difference between the scientific data, that's an objective measurement. This is a tool that we're using to measure versus our eyes, which are not tools, really. They're just balls in our heads that are taking in information. So as an agronomist or someone who's doing research, the traditional method is to have a clipboard or a tablet that has a bunch of different traits that you're going to look at a plot, and you're going to make some quick determination of the different traits of that plot, and write down it's some number out of 10 or some number out of 5. And you're going to do that hundreds and hundreds of times in a day. Likely, if you're doing this, you're probably a summer student. So if you think about that and you're a summer student, you're going out, it's starting the day at 25 degrees Celsius at 8 a.m. At 4:30 p.m., it's 36 degrees Celsius, and you've been in the sun all day long. Do you think your measurements of the exact same crop, but you're now on plot number 727 out of 800. Do you think your measurements are going to be the same as they were at 8 in the morning? So that's a subjective analysis. And that's the way that we rely, or we have been relying on research for a long time. And drones are really changing the way that research is done because we're relying on, we're doing objective measurements now. So these are just some of the different traits that we're able to create measurements for. Vigor is something that usually has been traditionally done just by looking at how vibrant and how big and just like a generalization about how healthy that plot looks out of 10. Well, we can create something like that as well, but based on some scientific measurements. And there's also stand assessment, looking at the percentage of plants that are coming up, emergence and maturity rates, flowering rates, plant height, and lodging. These are all different things that can be done now, and more than that even. These are just some examples that I'm going to show you. So stand assessment, there's different tools that are available and software that you're able to take some aerial data that you've collected, run it through the system. It's going to analyze the canopy cover, the percentage of area that's actually covered by leaf area, and measure the row length. So basically, if you know in a plot that you're supposed to have a 5-meter row or a 10-meter row, that's how long it should be if it all grew in. Software can analyze and measure all the holes in that and then tell you that of your 5-meter row, you've got an average row length of 3.5 meters or something like that. That's telling you, or 3 meters. That's telling you you've got 60% growth or maturity, or sorry, emergence. That's just a tool that goes into this. So that'll give you an emergence percentage. You can analyze the NDVI values, and you can average your plant heights as well. Plant height is a really interesting one when you compare the way that it used to be done. I'll talk about that in a few minutes here. So vigor is something I mentioned, traditionally just looking at it and looking how vibrant it looks and some other factors that now if you're going out and you collect some data with a drone, you can take a snapshot, like one image, one snapshot in time to give you an idea of the vigor. But vigor is something that you get a better idea of if you're able to do multiple flights. So for research purposes, it's best to gather more data points. If you go out and you collect one assessment, you can get information from that. But having 3 or 5 or more flights in a season can give you some really good information. So you can go through and you can track the growth of the plot over a period of time to see which plots are the best. And that's the whole point of the research, is to detect which plots and which combination of whether it's seed variety or fertilizer or other kind of crop input, what is the best? That's what we want to know. What's the best? What's the worst? And how do they fill in the middle? Drones are totally revolutionizing the way that that's all done. And then at the same time, you want to see what the maturity rates are. What's the fastest to mature, fastest to yield so we can harvest the soonest? Waiting till October to harvest when we could have a massive snowstorm on October 5th is something that we probably want to avoid if possible and get it done as soon as possible. And so being able to track that and see what percentage of your field, if you extrapolate and you go, okay, instead of looking at plots, and now you shift over and you start looking at the feasibility of using this at a field scale, then you can, with some of these software tools, you can detect what percentage of your crop is at what percentage of maturity to help you determine if it's time to go, if it's go time, or if you're going to wait for a bit still. This is some research that we did a couple of years ago now with ICMS and Portage. We have worked with them with our education programs. They're a great partner, and what we've done here is flown a canola field And we flew it a few times throughout the season, trying to detect which plots were the fastest to flower and to lose their flowers. And so here's a little snapshot. It may be hard to see at the back, but there's certain plots that I've highlighted on here that are taken. Now there's like 1,000 plots in this whole thing. This is just one little section. But you can see here in the red, for example, the two plots that we're looking at the first flight on July 15th, one of the plots was at 95% already, which was ground truth by the person on the ground, agronomist on the ground, compared to the one above that, which was at 15%. 1 week later, they've almost swapped, like we've got a 50 to 5%. There was a massive weather event in between here, which I can't remember if I've got the slide in there or not. I'll see. No, I took the slide out. But basically, there was a big weather event in between July 15th and July 21st that caused a lot of lodging. And so you can see that a lot of these plots are kind of knocked over. There's a huge amount of lodging. And one of the things that we were tracking in this was percentage of lodging. And you can see in some of the data that we've collected how the average height of all these plots was X in July 15th. And then July 21st, it was like X minus half a meter. Basically, all of them were half a meter shorter than they were a week before. And then they started growing back again after that lodging event. So the way that the height measuring component works is by, once again, measuring thousands or hundreds of thousands potentially of pixels in one plot and figuring out what their height is and then averaging those out. Compare that to taking a meter stick and going like this and trying to estimate or walking into the plot. Really, if you're assessing 1,000 plots in a day, there's a good chance that you're not spending more than 10 to 20 seconds on them. If you fly once, and this applies to your fields as well, where there's nothing but bare earth, and then you create a base layer, and then you go out and you fly mid-season or any other time, you can use that second flight to figure out what all of your plants, basically all the average height of your field is, or the average height of certain areas. You can break it into blocks. And the last thing I wanted to talk here is about, I mentioned lodging, and I throw this slide in there as a bit of a shout out to Dr. Shurtleff at the University of Saskatchewan. He's been doing a ton of work over the years with drones in agriculture specifically, and so this is one of the studies that he found. Basically, using a drone to collect this data to determine the percentage of lodging was as effective as doing it visually, but way more time efficient, that's the word I was looking for. You're not using nearly as many resources to go and figure out the same amount of information. Okay, now I'm going to move on to talking a little bit about the research program that we've got going on in schools across Manitoba. It's called the Science Experiential Aerial Research Program. So in this program, I touched on it earlier, students learn about the regulations, they learn about the data, they learn how the electromagnetic spectrum works, kind of like I was explaining to you. They learn about photosynthesis, and we teach them about flying drones and how to pilot drones, how to collect data, proper techniques for collecting data. Some of them will get their pilot certificates, and they'll get a chance to fly some of the bigger equipment. Everybody gets a chance to fly these smaller drones, and they also do some agronomy, basic agronomy. So they're in these images here, we have students doing soil sampling, learning about the different types of soil that are found across the province. They're doing moisture analysis, they're doing leaf chlorophyll assessment, and learning about how to assess roots. Basically ground truthing. So if you go out and you collect data with your drone and you find an area in your field, it's like, oh, that area is not as good as that area. You want to know why. it doesn't tell you why. The drone will never tell you why exactly. Sometimes you have to go and check to see why. And then when you figure out why, you can extrapolate and go, okay, well, that area is, like, this whole area is bad because of this one problem in this, and I figured out that it's army worms, or it's some kind of blight, whatever the problem is. Once you figure out what the problem is, then you can create a treatment plan for it. So in addition to collecting the data, they learn how to analyze the data. So we go back into the classroom and we teach them how to use machine learning tools to highlight certain things. In this case, we're looking at corn, and they're teaching a machine learning algorithm how to identify the different growth stages. So whether it's V1 or V3 or V6, we're teaching the kids what those different characteristics look like. And I say kids, but this isn't all for high school students. It's also for university students. We have partnerships with universities as well. So it's been an exciting program because of the fact that we're dealing with such high-level technology. This is probably what you're here about. You want to hear about spray drones. So I created this presentation to try and touch on many different aspects of the industry. So to get into spray drones here, this is, I mentioned, it's a wave. It's a wave of interest from a lot of people because of the fact that you can use these drones to target specific areas in a field and treat those areas, whether it's adding more seed, if it's an area that was flooded out in the spring and now it's dried up a little bit, so now you can go out and seed that area, reseed it specifically. Or maybe you've got a slope that machinery can't get to, or rocky areas in your field that just traditionally you've avoided. Well, now you can get seeding drone in there. There's many different ways that you can use these. It's not just spraying. There are some regulatory hurdles that we have not overcome yet that have to do with spray drones. One of them is PMRA, the Pesticide Management Authority. They're basically not allowing the use of pesticides for the most part at this point in these drones, unless it's for research purposes. You can get special approvals to do that sort of thing. But as long as it's, and the reason for that, I should say, is because it's not on the label that that these pesticides can be used and dispersed from a drone yet. I don't think that's going to be a forever thing. But right now, as it stands, pesticides are kind of a no-no from using the spray drones. However, you can use certain types of fertilizers and you can seed with them. You can use waters and different things like that. But the regulations that are changing right now through Transport Canada, they've put out a proposal. It's called Canada Gazette 1, which is where they propose their changes to the population. And then they take feedback from everybody. That feedback period is now closed, and they're making their final tweaks to the regulations. And in Canada Gazette 2, which usually comes out around June, they'll probably, around that time, release their updated regulations that will change the way that medium-sized, remotely piloted aircraft up to 150 kilograms are allowed to operate in Canada. So it looks like you'll be allowed to fly visual line of sight, so as long as you can see it, and you can see those big drones. I don't have one with me on the stage, but if you come by the drone dome, you can see one up on the stage. They're pretty big. You can see them for a good way. So as long as you're flying visual line of sight over sparsely populated areas, which rural agriculture land is basically all fitting into that box so far. Below 400 feet, you wouldn't really want to spray up higher than that, I don't think. Would make, mainly you're going to be spraying from a few feet above the crop. And in uncontrolled airspace. That's the big one. I'll talk, I think I've got a slide in here that shows you what uncontrolled airspace is all about. The regulations would remove the requirement for a special flight operations certificate. That's the big thing. So a Special Flight Operations Certificate, or an SFOC, is currently in, that's what you have to have that in order to use one of these bigger drones. And you have to have your Advanced Pilot Certificate. You have to, once you get your Advanced Pilot Certificate, you have to apply to Transport Canada with an SFOC to say, okay, I want to spray, I want to use this big drone, I want to apply some fertilizer to my crop, and I'm only going to be doing it in this area, and I'm only going to fly under these certain conditions, and it's a big plan, and it's a big pain in the butt if you want to try and use this technology. And so they're kind of getting away from that, and they're moving towards the next level, which is allowing you to fly under the Advanced Pilot Certificate level with a drone that weighs more than 25 kilograms, up to a maximum of 150 kilograms, as long as you're within those right here, within this framework. That's the projected upcoming regulations. That's the gist of them. Now, I'm going to quickly touch on some of the other regulations. If you're not familiar with the Part 9, which is the remotely piloted aircraft section of the Canadian Aviation Regulations, I'm going to touch on the absolute must-know components of that if you have never looked into it before in 200 seconds. Ready, go. All right, so there's two types. There's basic and advanced pilot certificates. If you want to fly a drone that weighs 250 grams or more, you're going to have to get one of these. The basic, you only have to be 14 years of age or older, allows you to fly drones that are up to 25 kilograms, but you have to be outside of controlled airspace. And the next slide, I think, shows you where that is in Manitoba. And the advanced, you have to be at least 16 years of age or older, and that allows you to fly anything above 250 grams up to 25 kilograms. Currently, more than that, like I said, up to 150 kilograms if you have a special approval. And it also allows you to fly inside or outside of controlled airspace. So here's the controlled airspace in Manitoba. Sorry if you're from Saskatchewan or Alberta, I don't have that on here, but you can go to the drone site selection tool through the government website there. Just Google drone site selection tool, and it'll give you a map of Canada, and it shows all of the controlled airspace in the country. You zoom in, and you can see anywhere there's red, that's controlled airspace. So if you live in Manitoba, you can't fly with your basic pilot certificate in those red areas. And also in that orange area, that's the national park, Rocky Mountain National Park. You can't fly in there either. However, most of the province is open. The vast majority of land in Manitoba, and just in general in Canada, is uncontrolled airspace, which means for the vast majority of drone uses, you can be out. You don't have to be. You don't have to have an advanced pilot certificate. You can get by with just the basic. So if you're in or around Dauphin, Brandon, Canadian Forces Base Shiloh, Portage la Prairie, Winnipeg, Roland. There's a rocket range down around Roland. Gimli, Pinawa, or Rocky Mountain. Those are the areas that you cannot fly with your basic. You have to register your drone. You have to go, if it weighs 250 grams or more, you have to go to Transport Canada's website and register your drone, get the number that they give you and write it or put it on a label and stick it right onto your drone. You have to fly where you can see your drone, visual line of sight. We'll talk about that in a bit. Right of way, meaning stay away from basically everybody and everything other than, well, just everybody and everything. That's about as good as it gets. I mean, stay away from planes for sure, and vehicles and people and animals. If you're doing livestock, obviously you're looking for livestock and you might be flying over them. That's fine if it's your own or if you have permission to do so, but you're supposed to give way to animals and not fly near animals, especially migrating birds. Ooh, bink. Sometimes I just sit there and watch that over and over. Operating emergency procedures. This is something that a lot of people I don't think fully always do. You have to have like a manual for your own business, yourself, or a company that you work for. You got to have a manual basically that says how you do what you do, how you're going to be flying. And there's listed in the regulations, there's a list of different points that you have to talk about in that manual. It doesn't take very long. It takes maybe a few hours to get that sorted out, and once it's done, then you're good. You also have to have, so that's your operating manual. Then you also have emergency procedures outlined as well. What you're going to do if you lose control of your drone, or if the drone runs out of battery, what is it going to do, and all those different types of things. You have to adhere to the drone's manual, so the manufacturer comes out with a manual, and you have to adhere to the manufacturer's instructions. If they say don't fly when it's minus 10 is the cutoff, or 0 is the cutoff, if you're flying below 0 and 0 is the cutoff, you're breaking the law. So you can't do that. You have to follow whatever the manufacturer's instructions are, whether it's wind speed or precipitation or temperature. Yes, this is the last one. You have to keep flight records as well. So track who's flying, when they're flying, where they're flying, what they're flying, how long they were flying for, all that kind of stuff. You can just keep a little log. It could be a notebook, and just keep it with your drone. That's your logbook. All right, so I'm nearing the end of my presentation, I believe, and I just wanted to once again mention, if you're interested, we've got presentations going on at the Drone Dome basically every hour on the hour today and tomorrow especially. We have a cage of drones set up over there where you can fly drones. However, I forgot the batteries for the drones in Winnipeg, so they're coming out tomorrow. But for now, you can come and we have a demo. We'll have a demo of the Mavic Mini flying around in that cage, and we have some experts come from a long way to speak about the technology. And you can see this drone. You can learn about the T40 Agris spray drones and more use cases. Here's a summary of some of the presentations that are going on. We'll be talking about multispectral a little bit more, some crop research stuff, like a little bit more expanded on what I was talking about today. We got basically this presentation I'm giving now, I'll be giving tomorrow morning. I'll give another update on the regulations, and there's some other stuff in there. Thermal sensors on the farm is another one, how you can use thermal sensors for livestock management. I wanted to put it out there for questions, so I know a lot of people come to these things when I give these presentations, and they've got lots of questions, so I wanted to make sure I had enough time to answer some of those. Here's one here. No. So the question was, can you get multispectral drones in less than 250 grams? I will say no. I don't know of any systems, like they don't make the minis as a multispectral. That would be really cool if they did. But the multispectral, like the Mavic 3, for example, I would say the Mavic 3 multispectral, the reason I have it in there, I don't work for DJI. I like their drones, though. They're really good drones. And that Mavic 3 multispectral is kind of revolutionary. Like, you can get NDVI. They call it live NDVI. You can see on your screen as you're flying. You don't have to collect the data and then process it. You can see it live. It's processing the reflectance coming off the crop, the near-infrared, and it's running the algorithm and giving you a live view of the reflectance values on your field. That's something I've been saying should have been around for a long time. It's only been around now recently for the last about a year. That system came out last year. So yeah, it's about, it's almost 2,000 grams, I think, so it's well beyond that level. And that system costs around $7,000. So it's definitely a kick up from this one. This one is, you can get a really basic model. Even the older minis, they're like a few $100s now. The brand new minis with screens on them, you can get for like $1,000 or something. Yeah. Hang on. Can't hear you. Okay, the question was, what all can you do with that mini drone except for practice? So, the resolution of this camera is 48 megapixels, which is really good, although the sensor is a little bit small. The next version they come out with will probably have a bit of a bigger sensor. Am I getting booted off right away? No? Okay. So what can you do? You can pull up to the edge of your field. You can take this thing out, throw a battery in, and you can get it ready to launch within 2 minutes. You can fly up to 400 feet and go out and take a look at your field, take some pictures, see, oh, there's an area that I didn't know that area wasn't very healthy. Let's go in and take a look. Like it's a different color, or it's just dead. Maybe there's some water drowned out or something. Fly down, get a really close up, like 5 feet away from a super high resolution picture. You can make some determinations from the data without having multispectral. You don't have to have multispectral to get value. I've been saying it for a long time, since the Mini came out. I think that every farmer and agronomist should have a micro drone, whether it's this one or some other one, because of it's a tool. It's an incredible tool. We've never been able to get that aerial perspective other than having a helicopter or a plane go out and do it. You have the ability to get that aerial perspective for a few $100s. And because they're so easy to fly, like you can take off, put the controller on the ground, and the drone will just hover there. You don't have to worry about constantly correcting it or anything like that. It just hovers there. It's got amazing technology, and unless there's a problem with the GPS or wind, like if you're flying in really high wind conditions, just be a little bit smart about it. Don't fly it when you're when the weather is not cooperating or anything like that. Be smart, and you'll get a lot of good use out of that drone. You can inspect your grain bins. You can use it to track your cattle and other things like that. There's lots of different uses. Yeah. Question was, can the sprayer drone utilize multispectral cameras? So it doesn't have a multispectral camera on it. It can, basically the process would be to fly with a multispectral camera, collect that data, process it in, because it's a DJI drone, process it in DJI's software platform to create a prescription model, a map basically that is going to show the drone. You're going to upload it into the drone, and the drone will know where to go. And you can, it's almost like hands-free. It's not completely hands-free, but when you're flying that big drone around, you're not doing it with your thumbsticks. You program where you want it to go and where you want it to spray, and you have a controller just in case something goes wrong. But it's an autonomous thing. It's flying based on your program that you've put into it. It would be cool if it had a forward-looking near-infrared or multispectral sensor that was able to process on board and spray, but that would be cool even on a ground-based sprayer. I think that's probably coming down in the future, but what we have right now, it's still a little bit cumbersome. Like we're just getting into that spray technology, the spray drone. So the way that technology works is that they give us just a little bit, and then they'll give us a little bit more, and then that's always the way that they work. Any other questions? Oh, there's a whole bunch up there. Well, there's many options. There's a few different options, and I don't want to say one company over another, because there's good companies that do some great things. I mentioned Pollen Systems is one, Centera is another one, and DJI has a proprietary software that they use as well. There's multiple tools out there that are capable of processing and then taking that data, and you can, whether you're putting it into a drone sprayer or whether you're putting it into a ground-based spray system, that uses variable rate. Some of these software tools, like Centera's system, they have developed a tool that integrates with John Deere's and Case's two different variable rate softwares that you can just basically take your data and transfer it over and create your prescription of how much per acre you want to go based on what color is in the data and how many levels that you're going to use. So like red, orange, yellow, light green, dark green, blue, however you want to structure it as being worst to best, and how you want each level to be addressed based on the percentage of top dressing or whatever you're putting on it. Yep. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much. That's my my email over there. If you have questions, you can throw me an email, or you can definitely drop by the Drone Dome.
Okay, thank you so much. Please have a applause for Matthew.